So this is the second of two recordings on how to create and implement an interface. And in the first one, if you'll remember, when you want to add an interface file to a project, you do File, New File, just like you're used to doing, but instead of choosing Java class, you're going to choose Java interface. And that will create, and I'm not going to do it because I've already created one, but what that will do is it will put public interface and then the name in there. Notice we don't have the word class anymore. And so I was explaining in the last lecture that if I have an algorithm that I can make generic, and the only problem I have is that I need to be able to pass different types of objects to it. So I need it to be generic enough that whether I pass it, say, a bank account object or a coin object, it can handle that. It can figure out how to get the maximum value no matter what type of object I pass to it. The interface allows me to set up my code in such a way that I can create generic algorithms that can handle whatever type of object I send them, so long as the objects all have the methods that are specified in the interface in common. So what ties these together is I create the interface and I say to myself, I'm interested in getting the maximum either bank account balance or the maximum coin value out of a collection of bank accounts or out of a collection of coins. So I'm going to use getMeasure to return the correct instance variable depending on which class I'm dealing with. For bank account it's going to be balance, for coin it's going to be value. So I'm going to have a method in each class that returns the correct instance variable to this generic algorithm. And then I also added this. I want to identify either the name of the account holder who has the highest balance or the name of the coin, whether it's quarter, dime, penny, nickel. So I've got two methods that I'm going to put here in the interface, and I'm going to have to write the code and implement them in each class to return the specific instance variables to the generic algorithm so I can get my results. So I put here just the return type, which could be void. I'm not sure. I can't think of an example where you do that. But I put the return type, the name of the method, and then paren, any parameters if I had any, and then semicolon, and that is it. These are abstract in the interface, meaning they're not implemented. There's no code in the interface file itself. We implement them, we make them concrete in effect in bank account and coin. So right here they're abstract, and because by definition all methods in an interface are public, we do not put the word public here. They are automatically public, so we don't have to put that. So now, in order to tie this all together, I had to create an extra file where every time I create, it's called data set, it's also in the textbook, every time I create a bank account, for example, I'm going to pass it into this add method, and it's going to figure out if this account has the highest balance or not. And it's going to reset the maximum, the highest balance, to this one's balance if it has the highest. Same thing with coin. Every time I add a coin to my coin data set, it's basically going to run through this add method and figure out, is this coin the one with the highest value or not? Now, in order to tie this all together, and notice here, here's the thing, I no longer have to worry about saying private coin maximum and then having another data set file somewhere, private bank account maximum. I no longer have to specify coin or bank account here because I'm using this measurable object. Measurable is going to handle bank accounts and coins. It doesn't care what the underlying object type is. This maximum is going to allow me to pass either one to this add method, and it's going to correctly figure out the maximum value, whether it's a bank account or a coin. And then when I want to print out the maximum bank account balance or the maximum coin value, I have to have one more method here in data set, a typical getter, that's going to return the object. Measurable can be either a coin or a bank account. That will get returned to the print line, and that value, that instance variable value, whether it's balance or value, depending on whether it's bank account or coin, will get printed out. So I have to have the generic method here, and then I have to have a getter to return that, and measurable is just basically a generic object. We're naming it maximum in this case. So how I do this is I come into my bank account and I create my bank account and my coin like I normally would, but I add, by typing manually, I add implements, which is a keyword, and then the interface name. So this is called measurable. So I'm going to say bank account implements measurable and coin implements measurable. Now what I want to show you is if I do that and I have not yet put in the code for get measure and get ID, I will get an error here on this line, and it's going to tell me coin coin doesn't have a get ID method. What this means is anytime a file implements an interface, it must have whatever methods are specified here. It must have a get measure method, and it must have a get ID method, and the first one must return a double, the second one must return a string. So as soon as I put that implements measurable in there, I have to go to get rid of that error. I have to make sure I have a get measure method and a get ID method. And as soon as I create those and put the implementation in, put the body in, put the code in, now that error goes away. And you would get the same thing on bank account until you put a get measure and get ID method in bank account. So if I look at the interface and I'm looking at some question on the AP exam and they give me this is my interface and they tell me bank account and coin implement that, then I better find a get measure and get ID method in each of those, one with a double return, one with a string return with the code in it. And so here, this is what I'm saying. So in the interface, I'm saying I need two methods to return the specific instance variables for these objects. But since this measurable is generic, I have to put the correct code in the actual files. So bank accounts get measure method is going to return the instance variable balance. That's the one that's applicable to bank account. But the get measure method in coin returns the instance variable value. That's the one that applies here. When I want to get the ID, I really meant get name. I called it get identifier, but you could call it get name. Here I'm returning the name of the account holder. That is the instance variable that's applicable here. And for coin, it's coin name. That's the instance variable that applies in the coin class. So you can see why here I'm just specifying the names and return types of the methods that I'm going to use for this generic interface, this generic algorithm. And here I'm actually returning these specific instance variables that apply to the particular object in question. So you'll still have your instance variables, your constructor, your getters, your setters, whatever here in your coin class, and same thing in your bank account. And then you will use the word public here. You will use public in the class file, not in the interface because they're automatically public. But here you're going to put public, double, get measure, public string, get ID, same thing in coin. And now I've tied myself back to the interface. I've implemented it. I put the methods in with their correct instance variables being returned. I've done that in both cases. This is really just a shell. It's an abstraction that helps me tie together everything so that I can use this in a generic manner. no matter what data, no matter what object type I'm using. And the other piece to this one is I have to really have a third class, not always required for an interface. It's just for this particular example, I'm putting the generic method into its own class called dataset. And this is where, see how I've got a measurable object, right? Here's my interface. Now here in dataset, measurable is going to become an instance variable object in the data set, and it's going to handle either a coin or a bank account. And I'm referring to it by the name maximum. I could have called it XYZ. I could have called it whatever I wanted to. And now when I call the add method on a measurable object, you know, I'm passing in bank accounts or coin, but I'm sort of cloaking them behind this generic measurable object. And so they named this one X, whether it's a bank account or a coin. And so I can use the getMeasure method, which remember it's sort of outlined here, but it is implemented here. So this one returns the balance, coin returns value. So when I'm in data set and I do maximum.getMeasure, if it's a bank account, it returns the instance variable bank account's value. If it's a coin, again, even with X, if it's a bank account passed in, it will return the balance instance variable. If a coin comes in, maximum.getMeasure returns the value of the coin that we have specified as the maximum. X returns the value of the coin being passed in. And then this is just to allow me to print it out later. So now let's look at the tester and how this is set up. So we're going to create a data set object so that we can pass each bank account to it. Now here I'm calling the bank account constructor. Mine's a little different than what's in the book. But notice I'm taking the bank account add method, the data set add method. I'm calling this method, I'm passing it in a bank account. And now I'm, with the first one, I'm setting the maximum value equal to, I think it was $1,000. Oh, sorry, 100 becomes my max value. Then when I add the next one, I'm passing that in. I'm comparing the 100 that was in the one that was the maximum to start with to the 10. 100 is still the max, so I don't really do anything. Now I'm creating another one and I'm sending in $1. So $1 is not less than the 100 that was originally established as the maximum. So I'm going to keep that. And if you can see down here, when I go back to my tester, at the very end I'm going to print out the actual highest balance and the name of the person. Before I do that, I have to create here a measurable object, and I can use this get maximum here to return the actual $100 back. And then I print out using this, again, this measurable object, .getMeasure.getID. So I say go to bank data, get the maximum, which in this case is the 100. Now store that in this measurable object that I've created called max. Pass in the bank holder's name, which is going to be Trump. Pass in the value, which is 100. His account number is 1, because everything for this first bank account right here, all the instance variables are now associated with max because it's been saved as the highest valued bank account. And now I can print the information out relating to it. If I wanted to do coins, I would create a second data set. I don't want to mix coins and bank accounts. So I want coin data. I'm going to create a new data set. And this is not an array. This is not like holding all the values for every one I create. All this is doing is giving me a way to compare different bank accounts as I create them, or coins. So if I do coin data, add, I'm going to add a new coin.